Hey, everybody. Here they come, Celeste.
That's good.
Yes. I hope we have a full class today. Hello, everybody. As you're joining us, let us know in the chat feature where you're calling in from. We'd love to know where you guys are calling from. And then just tell us maybe one hormonal or menopausal thing symptom that you think might be hormone related. Just one thing that maybe you're struggling with or curious if it's related to your hormones in the chat feature. Those two things, where you're from, and just one thing that you may be thinking, is this related to my hormones? So we've got Katrina in San Antonio, consistent fatigue, migraines, headaches. Fort Worth. Oh, hello, you're my neighbor. And Celeste, we're both in the Dallas.
Both of ours.
Yeah, we are both in the Dallas-Fort Worth area too. So it's Texas. It's really hot. I just heard on the news today that this is the top 10 hottest summer ever in Dallas-Fort Worth. And I believe it. It's awful. South Dakota. We were just there this weekend. We love it there. Oh, gosh. Arizona, bloating. Okay. I love the heat. Come here for a couple weeks and see what you think. Virginia, and excess weight gain. So if you're just popping in, I'm just asking people to put in the chat feature where they're calling in from and maybe one hormonal symptom that you think might be menopause related. Brain fog, I see. Burning skin, forgetfulness, Rhode Island, Salt Lake City. This is going to be great for you guys. Everything that you guys are kind of putting in the chat feature is what we're going to talk about today. Hot flashes and dry eyes. Ooh, dry eyes is one I did not have on my list, but we have time.
It is part of it.
It is. Bloating. I see lots of bloating. Okay, well, we are going to get right to it. And then if anybody pops in late, they can just catch the replay, or the replay will be sent out. We know that, hormones and menopause, it's a hot topic. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it. So we're here to add value to your day. And hopefully, even if you can just take one tiny tip away, that will help. We would feel like we were doing our jobs today. Tina from California, awesome. Okay, well, Celeste and I both are in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area. Celeste is actually my personal doctor. She's my functional nurse practitioner. So I give lots of kudos to her. She has taught me a lot about menopause, thyroid, and lots of just what's going on in my body. So she's an expert. She's got a slew of things that she can talk about her background, but she is the specialist tonight. I am the host, and I'm going to let her do all of the heavy lifting, but I'm just going to ask lots of good questions that you guys probably have. This class is called You're Not Crazy, It's Probably Menopause. And a lot of stuff happens when we start our perimenopause through postmenopause journey. Our hormones are related to many facets of our lives. And I don't think people even realize it. And it's not fair. Let me just say that as a woman, it's not fair. Like 50 to 100 symptoms come out of, losing your hormones, losing estrogen, losing your progesterone, losing testosterone. You're not alone. That's the good news. We're all in this together. Yeah. You're surrounded by a lot of like-minded women. And so if you're just in your 30s and starting this journey, hopefully you'll find some tips to help you going forward before you hit that transition period or where you hit that wall. Yes. So a little bit about me, and then I'm going to turn it over to Celeste to tell you about herself. But first of all, just thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so happy that you took time out of your day to come and learn and be part of the community. We're thrilled that you're here. I'm 49. I think Celeste is too. She finally caught.
I'm 48. I'm 48.
Oh, I thought you just had your birthday.
We're a year apart. We're a year apart.
I am a certified macro coach, a certified personal trainer, and a faster way to fat loss coach. I've been interested in the fitness and health world for as many years as I can remember, since I was a little girl. And I love helping people. I love serving and giving value and just really informing you guys of what's happening. And my goal is to help people build muscle, learn macros and nutrition, and get better sleep and less stress, and all of those things together. We're going to help you in your journey. So I'll talk a little bit more about the faster way at the end, but I want to turn it over to Celeste. She is our expert speaker tonight, and just a little tidbits about her and her journey.
Yeah. I'm Celeste McCain. I'm a nurse practitioner at South Lake Integrative Wellness here in Dallas, Fort Worth. Got to know Neely through Faster Way and refer lots of my people to her because I love the program and how it does stuff. But basically, lots of my women come in with all these symptoms, and the more I attended conferences and learned from some of the best hormone specialists in the country, really. And I'll refer to some of those, and have taken over 100 basically hours of understanding how our hormones work and everything. And so basically, I, kind of went on this journey more of things that I didn't know in my 30s or 20s that I really wish I would have. And so that's why I try and teach my patients to really, this can be a smooth transition. I have many women that do a smooth transition, but I'm 48. I actually had a partial hysterectomy when I was in my 30s due to some large fibroids. And so figuring out some of my symptoms when I wasn't really cycling and I didn't know really what that was part of my journey to really understand myself. And that helps me to understand just women in general. And so that's kind of my passion, is to help women of all ages really to really live their best lives and be their best selves. And Neely and I work together a lot with different patients and different people. So
Yeah, that's a good thing to note too, that everyone's journey is different. And some of you may have all the symptoms, and some of you may have a couple. Some people will go through it so easily, others really bad. And that's just one thing, we're all in it together, but we're all going to have different experiences for sure. So most of us think of menopause as hot flashes and night sweats. Those are like the big two. But there's actually 50, 100 symptoms that can go with it. It's crazy. And so let's start with just like the 3 stages of menopause.
Okay, so there's 3 stages of menopause. There's perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. All that really means is before menopause, menopause, and after menopause. So kind of the average age right now of menopause in America is around 52. So menopause is technically defined as not having a period for a year. That's really complicated right now because lots of people have different procedures or anything. So I also go with a follicle stimulating hormone over 30 is kind of when I know, okay, yeah, you're pretty much menopause. Perimenopause just means before menopause. This is where you're probably not ovulating as much. So that progesterone is our calming, wonderful hormone. You may not have as much of that. And estrogen's kind of trying to figure out what to do in that space. And so sometimes you might start having a lot of these symptoms, really increased anxiety, because that estrogen is kind of our superhero hormone, but we always need progesterone to calm it down. And so that's where a lot of those symptoms, our sleep is bad. We start just being more restless and anxiety. And perimenopause can actually start up to 10 years before menopause. So if the average age is 52, really they say between 45 and 55, that's where 90% of women hit menopause. So you can have symptoms back into your 30s for some women. And so that's why just getting a really good history and things like that from women, just understanding what their whole history is when they come in that perimenopause. Now, postmenopause is really after menopause. You haven't bled for a year, or that FSH is really high. And many times, this is kind of when hormone replacement therapy comes into play. And even before then, in perimenopause, I use hormone replacement too. But everybody's symptoms are very different. And those symptoms, again, once you hit menopause, can go for 10 years. So you think about the average age of menopause being 52. So you can go into your 60s and you could have had symptoms in your 30s. So that's a really long time.
It's a long time to suffer.
Yeah. And so I'm here to just kind of say you don't have to suffer. There's a lot of ways that you can help yourself too. So,
100%.
and I think, and there's a lot of great people on social media. I'm not really, Neely keeps trying to get me on social media more. But I'm just not really that person. But there are a lot of great doctors who really have put a lot of great information out there on social media. So
yes,
and I think
it's
that's
definitely
why
yes,
this is coming to the forefront. And so
absolutely. I do think more people are talking about it, which is great.
Yeah.
Yes. So you mentioned just having your normal annual blood work taken.
Yeah.
It's just kind of good to have it as a baseline, and it could be health indicators of disease, obviously, and menopause. So just being proactive and getting that done yearly is going to help, because it's going to show you backwards trends.
Yeah.
And how estrogen plays a role in not just your hormones, but it can actually play a role in cholesterol and other things that you might see just annually changing.
Yeah. And this is kind of what I did for myself, even just working with some of my providers, just going, okay, I want to do this. But seeing fluctuations in your cholesterol, especially because your cholesterol actually starts to rise the closer you get to menopause. Your anxiety will start to rise, your dry skin. We always think of dry skin, dry stuff. We always go with thyroid, which it can be thyroid. That's always a caveat. But that also goes with estrogen, because estrogen actually helps us lubricate everything, and so you can get irritable, things, weak bones, things like that. And so all of these are kind of those fluctuations of estrogen or the loss of progesterone. And so that's kind of, and talk about those things like vaginal dryness. Talk to your doctor about those things, because that's something that they need to know and go, oh, okay, we can help that.
Yes.
It's not just like, even tender breasts, because that can be a lot of estrogen and decreased progesterone. But kind of discuss those things and try and find a practitioner that will actually listen to you. There's a lot of great practitioners out there. There's some that just don't have the time. And so that's what I always suggest, is just trying to find ones that will really listen.
Yeah, the time and the knowledge, because like you said, you've taken hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
And sometimes doctors just don't know and want to throw something at you that you maybe don't need. But anxiety, I've heard you mention that twice now, and it is a real thing. Like the worry and the thoughts and the anxiety through menopause. Like, why does that happen? It's hormone related.
Yeah. A lot of times it's because we're not ovulating. So we only have so many eggs that we can actually ovulate. The only way we make progesterone, which is our calming hormone, is to actually ovulate. Okay. So if we're not ovulating, you can still be bleeding, but not ovulating. And so basically your estrogen gets really up there. Estrogen's a great hormone, but it needs that progesterone to calm it down. And so this is like your ADHD friend that kind of is all over the place. And you always have that calm friend that comes. And if that calm friend's not around, they just go nuts. That's kind of what estrogen does without progesterone. And so that's where you can just get way more anxiety. I had somebody in my office today that she was like, I just got scared of like going somewhere. And I've never had that feeling before in my life. And, talking to her, she's going through menopause. And so we're kind of working on some of those things. And so that's really where it comes from. Is I like to say, estrogen is that ADHD friend, and you just need that calming friend to come alongside of her.
Yes. So let's move on to, I know the hottest topic that's probably in this chat feature is why is my body composition changing? Like, why is my fat moving from my butt to my gut?
Yeah.
I think that could have been that title of my class.
That could have been, that would have been a great title too. Anyway, but
It's
one of the
true.
big reasons is a drop in hormone. If you think back to puberty years, you know, most of us were pretty much a stick or just didn't have any curves or anything like that before we hit puberty, that middle school years. And then we started getting hips and just thighs and things that it was like, oh, and that was estrogen. And that's to help us to start to develop things. Well, estrogen's kind of gone away once you're in menopause from the ovaries, and your adrenal glands take over. So your adrenal glands are the only thing that makes a little bit of estrogen, and cortisol is what comes from our adrenal glands. So cortisol is our stress hormone, which also leads to that anxiety too. And basically cortisol starts to spike a whole lot more, and cortisol loves fat, and they love abdominal fat. And so that's where the increasing abdominal fat starts to come from. And that also goes along with, we can get, you're actually a little more insulin resistant when you're going through menopause, because progesterone, again, that makes you a little more insulin sensitive. And so estrogen kind of makes them more, so a little bit lower carbs sometimes feels better, but you still need some of those carbs. But that's where that comes from, is those adrenals actually taking over for your ovaries. So.
Yeah. So if it's the cortisol that's high, we've got to reduce our stress.
Yes. And that's always a hard thing. I've told many moms and things like that in my office, 30s and 40s. My kids are now about to go off to college and things like that. I've really a less stress in some ways, but trying to get things around. And really, we have to take care of ourselves and have self-care. And so going on a walk by yourself, that's sometimes the best thing, is just going on a walk in nature. They actually did some studies that decreases cortisol better than any anti-anxiety drug. It actually beat Xanax out by 30% by going on a walk every day in sunlight. So
awesome. In sunlight. That's
yeah,
it's in the morning.
Sunlight, yeah. Sunlight does help. Right now, it's so hot in Texas that you want just a tiny bit of sunlight, because otherwise it's 115 degrees outside. So, but yeah, there's little things you can do to help with that.
Speaking of insulin resistance, walking is also good for that after you eat.
Yes. After you eat, 5 or 10-minute walk for everybody. That helps with your glucose levels, helps with the insulin resistance. It's an easy way just to, even if it's hot outside, walking up and down your stairs or around your house, doing some chores before you sit down and just watch a movie or whatever. So, but that really is really helpful.
Yes. So try to do that after every meal. It's very helpful.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next hot topic. So I've heard in this group, and I have it on my list, brain fog. We forget simple things. We go into a room to get something. We end up not knowing what we went in there for. We do 10 different tasks at once. Our mind's just going, our concentration, we feel out of it. Like, what's happening? How do we get our groove back?
And so, yeah, sometimes that it can be, I always tell people, make sure and get like some of your nutrients checked, your B vitamins, some things like that too. But it's a lot of times that fluctuation in hormones. And so estrogen is actually a neuroprotectant. So it protects our neural pathways. It protects our brain from inflammation. And so that's the other thing, is when those drop, basically some of those nerves don't have that estrogen, that lubricant, to be able to fire appropriately. And so sometimes it's really hard for us to go, okay, I had that just 2 seconds ago. And so many times to get your groove back, I always say the top things we always teach, Neely teaches this, eating whole foods, just looking what you're eating. I told a 76-year-old the other day, just eat things with one ingredient. And she's like, oh, that makes sense. And
It
so
comes from a tree or from a mother. It's
yes. And so start resistance training. I don't care how old you are. Do some resistance training. I like applaud even. I tell my people, if you like to walk, just put some weights in your hand and walk with some weights. That's actually resistance. Or do bands. Bands are amazing at resistance, and you can do them sitting down. So if you have some injuries that you're trying to work through, those are great things. Something you're moving. Sleep routines. And I know sleep, it's probably down the line a little bit, but sleep, really getting those routines, getting good sleep. If you are not getting good sleep, none of this is gonna, you have to start there. And so there's a lot of ways that you can help with that, and talk to your doctor about that, and get blood work and just see, okay, where's my thyroid? Where are some of my hormones? Where are my cholesterol? Where's just some of my regular things? And those are what every doctor runs, is they'll always run at least a TSH. But also, you may be having symptoms even earlier and earlier. One of the biggest things the biggest studies we're finding right now is hormone disruptors in our just stuff in our world. So hormone disruptors are things that act like hormones, but they're not. So they bind up those receptors and we can't use them anymore. One of the biggest is plastics. Okay. I hope most people have not heated anything up in plastic. I don't care if it says BPA free. You want to heat anything up in glass. And even drinking out of plastics, if you can, don't drink out of plastic water bottles. Try and get a good old Stanley like Neely has right now. I think I have the cheaper version that my daughter got me. But trying to get those. And then probably the biggest thing for women I see is actually phthalates and things like that. A lot of things in beauty products and soaps. And so and I'm not saying throw out everything and get all new. I'm always like, finish what you have and then get a cleaner product. So a lot of the brain fog, actually, I've had people just change their products and they're like, oh, I think that's really what it was. It was fragrances. That's huge. I do love some candles, but there's a lot better candles out there than Bath. I almost said Bed Bath and Beyond, but Bath and Body Works.
Yeah.
And so I really like, there's an app that you can go on. It's called ewg.org. Environmental Working Group is what they have an app. You can actually scan things in the grocery store if they have it in their system. It'll come up and it'll have an A, B, C, or D. And so you kind of want those A and Bs. You're not going to have everything perfect all the time, but those A and Bs. I also do love a person on Instagram. Her name's Just Ingredients on Instagram. She has her favorite site. She really does. She has a huge staff and actually does a really good job of vetting products, of, different things and having really clean products. So those are always my two go-tos to go, hey, if you want to switch some stuff out, do that. Cleaning products, that's another thing. There's a lot of great, I personally like vinegar and baking soda. It pretty much cleans anything.
Yes.
And
What was that website that you said again for products?
ewg.org. And it's an app. You can get it as an app. I think the Think Dirty, I don't use that one as much, but it has some of those. It has kind of the same similar thing as I think it's called Think Dirty, if I remember right.
And part of it is just look at the labels. If there's like hundreds of ingredients, don't use it. And if there's things you can't pronounce, even with your food, that's what my rule is. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the same thing with a lot of products. And that's really what they're seeing with a lot of research right now. is those products are actually causing us more hormone disruptors, which cause that brain fog too, because they're taking the place of our actual natural hormones. So that's a really caveat, is looking at that. If you're like, everything looks great, you're doing all the right things, that would be the next place I go.
Interesting. And good. I mean, that's something that's kind of easy to fix.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
yes. Awesome. Yes. And when you say like sleep routine, I'm always like, create a routine like a toddler. Like
Yes.
you have to have that structure. Pretend you're two again and just make that your day, night.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads us into the next one, which is fatigue. Like,
yeah.
do people feel like do you feel like you need a 3 o'clock nap? Is that normal? I mean, do you feel exhausted?
Well, it is kind of natural. If you think of a cortisol curve, I have a lot of people who come in, sometimes we'll test their cortisol, but you should have like kind of a spike in the morning, and then you naturally drop off. And about that 3 o'clock is actually one of your lowest points of your cortisol. So it's very natural that we have that, but also you shouldn't feel so exhausted that you just can't get up or do anything. And so some easy ways to kind of help with that again, that cortisol kind of takes over. And so sometimes that drop seems way more significant. Like you had a huge spike because you're way too anxious and anxiety. And so you have a much farther way to drop. And so your body just almost crashes. And so good things to have. I always say my new thing, and this is just started for me lately, is having a protein shake. I have about 5 or 10 minutes between patients, and I'll do like early afternoon, I'll do like a protein shake. Instead of having it in the morning, I'll have it in the afternoon. And that really kind of wakes everything up. And things, or even like avocado, something fat related with some sea salt actually wakes up the cortisol. It wakes up those adrenals and kind of, okay, I can keep going. And a lot of times it comes back to when they say I need a 3 o'clock nap, trying to figure out if it is a cortisol level issue, because are you waking up in the middle of the night? Are you sleeping through the night? What's your sleep routine? Because that actually has a lot to do with where your hormones stand. And so just talking about your sleep, going, I wake up at 3 a.m. every day. Well, that's usually a cortisol thing, but that can be fixed with some hormones, some different things that we can do. But even just making that routine can actually help with just your sleep in general. So if you don't have a routine, making a routine.
Yeah. I'm gonna circle back to cortisol and the waist, the belly fat.
Yeah.
You just said you were talking about protein, and I preach this all day long. We need protein, and we need a lot of it. And that will help with the belly fat too. Because if you focus on protein, you're gonna feel full and satisfied, and your body needs it. And especially as you
and it keeps your energy a whole lot longer throughout the day. I think the biggest mistake we've made, and things I know Neely has to teach this and I have to teach this, is having a high protein. Whenever you break your fast, if you do some intermittent fasting or anything like that, whenever you break that fast, doing something that's high protein, because that's going to get you through the day. Something, our normal muffins, things like that, that's not going to get you through the day. That's going to make you crash and you're just going to feel tired. So I preach a lot of protein too.
Yeah. And speaking of intermittent fasting, like you were saying, when you break your fast, intermittent fasting can be good for the brain fog too. So
yeah,
that's another tip that I just thought of when we were talking about that.
And that is true. I mean, a lot of people will say about that 15, 16 hours that they're like, oh, I feel like I'm clear again. So, because our bodies do need to rest digestively too.
They do. And I know I talk about this a lot in my groups, that fasting doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't even have to be 16 hours. I mean, 12 hours is fasting, like
Yeah.
7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Like
Yeah.
that's a fast.
I tell my people that all the time. I'm like, it doesn't have to be, different ways work for different people. And so having to work with somebody to do that.
Okay. Yeah. So get that good sleep routine. Exercise always helps with sleep too, because you feel,
Yes.
it gets you going in the morning, and it also just helps you sleep better. So
Yes.
exercise could really be all of these things. It's good for brain fog. It's good for fat loss. It's good for cortisol. It's good for all of those things. So
it's great for everything. And so, and it doesn't have to be cardio too. I always say lifting, we think so much of cardio, and I actually just want you to get steps in and resistance train. So that's a big thing too.
Same. You start losing muscle around age 30. So you're either losing it or you're building it. So
yeah.
Pick up the weights. Yeah, that's my thing too. The weights and movement. Get your steps in.
Yep.
So the next question I know that's in this chat feature is about wrinkles. And maybe I haven't seen it yet, but I know that as you get closer to menopause and estrogen starts going away, your face can radically pick up wrinkles. Like what? Like it does.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. And I've only learned this probably in the last couple of years, but estrogen actually is what makes us have smooth skin. So that drop in estrogen actually causes wrinkles. And so if you don't have that estrogen, then those wrinkles start to get bigger and saggier and things like that, because our estrogen actually helps keep everything tight, helps keep everything lubricated. And so that's where that comes from.
Yeah, it's amazing how as your estrogen drops, like you start to age quick, like your face starts to look older. And so I hope that you guys are all hearing that estrogen plays a role in pretty much every cell of your body. It really does.
It does.
So when we lose it, like this is why everything's happening. It's because we're losing that estrogen.
Yes.
Obviously hormone replacement therapy can help with that. Nutrition, good nutrition, antioxidant, sunscreen, all of those things too.
Yeah. There's a lot of great things out there that you can do that's great for your skin, but you're combating some of those loss in hormones.
Yes. We'll keep moving because this was a topic that I saw multiple times. Digestion. Hello to gas and bloating. Gut health. Gut health changes a little bit too.
So I always talk about, that estrogen is fluctuating. So one of my favorite people that she always talks about estrogen as a bathtub. So you have 3 ways to get rid of estrogen. And so the first one you have to fix is the pipes. Okay. The last place our estrogen goes is into our gut, and we eliminate it through bowel movements and things like that. And so if there's something wrong with that, then our whole system gets backed up and we can't fix it. And so what actually happens is that fluctuation in those hormones, our gut's trying to figure out, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff. And it actually creates a dysbiosis or bad ratios of that bacteria. And so because there's more of it, there's less of it, it's another brain. So it's trying to figure out what to do. We don't know. And so you tend to start to crave those carbohydrates, increase sugar, and things like that. And that increases things like candida, our yeast overgrowth, and you start to get more gas and bloating. You also have digestive enzymes in our pancreas that actually fluctuate with our hormones too. And so those enzymes don't work as well. And so you're putting all this stuff into your body and it can't break it down. So those enzymes get decreased, and that bloating starts to happen because those increased sugars that increase insulin resistance. And if you don't have that progesterone, again, they work together to calm it down. progesterone actually makes you insulin sensitive. So your insulin can be picked up a little bit more when you have that progesterone. And so you can't do that without that. And so the estrogen all by itself is kind of screwing things up. And so I usually say start with like cutting some of the carbohydrates for about a week or so and seeing if that helps a little bit, but also a good probiotic. Some of the strains, there's a million probiotics out there. There's actually there's a lot of great ones and things, but the strains I actually look for most are lactobacillus. It's lactobacillus helps, especially our vaginal health. And things. And so I usually look for a lactobacillus in a probiotic. Saccharomyces boulardii. This is one that's not quite as common. So Saccharomyces boulardii it actually eats up all the bad bacteria. It has actual studies if you've ever heard of C. diff, which is a horrible bacteria that can cause huge GI infections, it can actually help kill that.
Wow.
So it actually eats up a lot of great bacteria. It helps with yeast. It helps with so many things. And then bacillus, and get a good balance. So I always say, look for something that has 3 strains in it. And then I would try and find kind of a leaky gut protocol, because you tend to have leakier gut as you go along in the perimenopause to menopause journey. And so that gas and bloating. And so there's several different ones out there. And so I usually say, talk to a doctor. There's a few online, but leaky gut protocol to help repair the gut and decrease that gas and bloating. If that gas and bloating does not go away with just a few protocols and things like that, really talk to your doctor about some different things. It could be like a SIBO, it could be H. pylori, it could be something that's overgrowth that we need to treat. And so there's a lot of testing out there that you can do for that too. If it just is like, this is just not normal. And that's where you work with your doctor with that.
Yeah. And there could be some foods that you're insensitive to as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
Definitely.
one thing to, first maybe take out dairy, take out
Yes.
gluten,
Yeah.
see if that helps first. Maybe it's your protein powder, because that can be very hard on your diet. Some people can do great with one powder and some people can do great with another. Like it can cause
I think
a lot
we
of
talked about, you don't do good with pea protein.
I do not.
So, so, I mean, it's one of those things that you have to find but I usually start with kind of our leaky gut protocol, which is like taking out gluten and dairy for about 3 or 4 weeks, and or kind of doing a Whole30 is another thing, is to see if that, and a Whole30, you can go on their website and get all their stuff.
Yeah.
So,
or a good digestive enzyme.
Yeah.
Can help
Yes.
you. Especially if it's a food that maybe eggs bother you, but if you take that, it can help, or something like that. But the faster way is gluten and dairy free. So all our menus are already done for you, which is amazing.
They are amazing too.
Yeah, they are. Okay, awesome. I'm going to write those down about those probiotics. That's good to know, but that's really interesting about the one that actually kills the bad bacteria. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So some joint pain is normal with age. I mean, we've used our muscles and our joints and our body for years and years and years. We've run, we've done hard things, but why does it seem like midlife, it just gets worse?
Yeah. Well, and that goes along with the drop in estrogen. So if you think about, one of the things we kind of think about is vaginal dryness, because we kind of see that some women don't have it that much, but some get very dry, and with intercourse or whatever are like, and so our bones our joints are actually the same. Estrogen actually helps lubricate our joints. And so that drop in estrogen makes your joints more achy and you just can't move. You're like, I'm like 80 years old today. And so that's really that drop in estrogen again. So that's really, talk to somebody. It's not always arthritis or things like that. You can do some things to help.
It's true. I was really thinking like a maybe a year or two ago, like I was taking some joint supplements. I'm like, what is going on? Like, and I do take some HRT now, and it has dramatically reduced my joint pain, like crazy. Like,
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
Like, because when you have joint pain in your 40s, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to feel like at 80?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and an interesting side note is, I've had some joint pain. I actually hurt my elbow, and I was making that an excuse not to lift or anything. And the funny thing is, like, oh, I need to get back to lifting. It'd been like a week or so. And so I got back to lifting. I was like, okay, it hurts a little bit, but now it's gone away.
Exactly.
And it was one of those things that sometimes you have to kind of push through some of those things to help with that.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, if there is some joint pain, I'm sure there are some supplements that you can take to help with that. I mean, collagen would be great for your
collagen
joints.
is always my go-to. There's some great collagen powders on the market. Glucosamine, CoQ10, ubiquinol. Those are kind of the big ones that I usually do. If you still have some joint pain, those are the ones I kind of go to for some of that. But also movement. It's amazing. Like if you stop moving, you can't lubricate those joints, whether you're on estrogen or not, you can't lubricate those joints without movement. And so the more you tend to sit around and do nothing, that's what happens to those joints is they get dry. And so I always say, just get out and walk. If you can't do anything else, just get out and walk.
That is so true. When we were home over Christmas break, we had a really long car ride, and then it was winter. We were inside, we sat around a ton. I got back and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I need to go to the chiropractor. I wasn't so stiff and in pain.
Yeah.
I was like, my back hurts, my hips hurt. And I know it's because I was just not as active as I normally am.
Yeah.
It's crazy what exercise
it's amazing. And especially as you get older, if you don't do that, there's actually a study that older people, and this was done like 65 and older people, that if they go into the hospital, and in the hospital, they don't move you around that much. I used to work there. They don't move you around that much. They're too busy. And so you actually lose about 5% of your muscle every day you're in the hospital.
Wow.
So I have a friend that's a geriatric doctor that she goes, I will do everything in my power not to land my patients in the hospital, because they lose that muscle and then they won't move. And then that just goes down a myriad of paths. And so that's why I always say movement.
Walk. Yes.
Yeah. I'm that weird person. My daughter had a procedure and I was waiting for her in the waiting room, and I was like, why am I sitting here? And so I went and walked the whole hospital, because I was like, I just need to move somewhere.
Yes, I know. We were just in the airport this weekend, and I was like, I'll be right back. And so I was gone for like a half hour. He was like, where have you been? I'm like, I just needed to get my steps in.
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit here.
I'm the same way. But it feels so much better when I do. Yeah.
Yes.
And everybody has a step counter on their phone. We usually keep our phones everywhere. You don't have to have an Apple Watch. So I tell people that all the time, that it's on your phone. So
and if nothing else, just get the pedometer app. It's super easy. Yeah. Okay, I think one of the last questions before I kind of open it up. Some women come to me and tell me they're actually hungrier now than ever before, even when our metabolism is getting a little slower and we're not moving as much. And so why is this happening?
Yeah, that fall in estrogen actually increases your hunger, because it increases that hormone that causes you to be hungry. And so that's the other thing, is that's why we both preach about protein and hitting protein goals. I always tell people, if nothing else, hit your protein goal, because it's going to help you stay longer and won't allow that hormone to come up.
And fiber, protein and fiber. Yeah. Those are my two.
Protein and fiber are definitely my two, but for hunger, protein is the number one.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to overeat protein. Like, it's just really hard. So if you can get that protein in, eat it first. I always say, eat that first off your plate, then go eat your vegetables and your carbohydrate source. Like, the potato is not bad for you, but eat your protein first. Eat the chicken first.
Yes.
Yeah. Katrina says, I go through phases where I'm either hungry or not hungry ever. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stinking hormones.
I know. I have lots of questions,
Yes. Well, let's just chat a little bit about HRT. We're not here to preach about HRT, but
No.
it's just something that should be talked about. You should be aware of it. If it's right for you, it might not be right for you.
Yeah.
But just know that by replacing some of your hormones in your body, it's doing more than just getting rid of night sweats and hot flashes.
Mhm. It's getting rid. It actually is bone protective. Osteoporosis actually can be reversed with a little bit of HRT. And I've actually seen it in my patients. It's a neuroprotectant. It's cardiovascular protectant. Because of that fluctuation, that drop in hormones, that's where women in their 50s, if that's when we're most vulnerable to have a heart attack, is in our 50s, early 50s. And so that hormone replacement actually has been shown to be protective of that. And that's always a conversation to have with your doctor. The hard thing is with the Women's Health Initiative, most of these doctors have never been trained on hormones. So finding one that has been trained in hormone replacement therapy, there's a lot of options. And so just seeing if it's right for you, if you had breast cancer or breast cancer in your family, they can talk through some of those things about that. One of my favorite books is Estrogen Matters. And it's a great book that just kind of walks you through why estrogen really matters, and the benefits and it actually doesn't cost, if it's bioidentical, they actually have done studies, it does not, you have no risk of breast cancer higher than if you don't take hormones, if it's bioidentical. So,
Yeah. I read that book too. Love that book.
yeah.
I'm going to just look through the questions really quick. Is
Yeah.
it true that hormone replacement is not safe if you have breast cancer history in your family?
It all depends on what kind of breast cancer. If you have those risks, it also depends on how far relationally with your family you are to those people who've had breast cancer, if it's actually genetic, if it was hormone positive. So there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, but there are some that risk versus benefits, that we actually, I have one patient that I partner with her oncologist. She actually did have breast cancer, but both her oncologist and I think that it could be, but we monitor extremely closely, and things like that. So but I have some patients who are like, no, that's not, I don't think that's okay. And we can do a lot of things to help you curve these symptoms, but that's really getting a history and really seeing what your family history of breast cancer is.
Yes. Let's see. The weight gain has me stressed. So yeah.
And it goes
Stress.
up and down, and that stress causes even more weight gain. And so the really hard thing is, and I always say a really positive thing, especially for me, I'm one that I lose inches, I don't lose weight. And so one of the most positive things I think for me was, even they're not hugely accurate, but they're pretty accurate, was getting a scale that does your muscle and your bone density, your bones. You can get them on Amazon for $30, I think. But that helped me to go, you know what, I'm building muscle, and you can actually see that, and doing inches overweight. Because I have people who have lost tons of inches and have lost 0 pounds. I think I lost I lost 12 inches overall, and I lost 4 pounds.
Yeah. And I tell that's the first thing I tell my clients. I'm like, I need you to weigh yourself today just so I can do your macros, but I don't want you to weigh yourself again. We take pictures and we do measurements, because those are really how, when you're building muscle and losing fat, your weight might not change, but your body composition will. And that's what matters. Who cares what you weigh? Like, I mean, I know a lot of you are like,
that's what I tell patients all the time, because I can put a 120-pound woman or even a 180-pound woman And I have one that's extremely fit and thin, but she's just all pure muscle. I have one that's really, actually, she just has a lot of more fat on her. So putting those women together, there's very different things that I would do for those women. So it's about body composition, definitely.
Yes. Here's a question about magnesium. I heard that magnesium is good for menopause. Are there any other vitamins that can help?
Yeah. Menopause is my number one. If you're not on magnesium, and that goes for pretty much anybody, because magnesium runs about 600 different things in your body. And so getting on magnesium is really great. There's a lot of different forms. My favorite forms, most of the ones sold are citrate. That goes straight for your bowels a lot of times. So the ones I like are glycinate and malate. There is a new one on the market that has all the magnesiums in it, called BioOptimizer, that I've just started using with some of my patients. It's been really helpful because it has all of them in it. But glycinate and malate are the ones that have been studied in menopause more than anything. And yes, it does help. And you just have to, usually I say start about 300, and you can titrate up from there from bowel tolerance, because they do, all magnesium works on the bowels and things. And so that's probably one. My other one is actually turmeric. Turmeric or curcumin, those actually, it decreases that inflammation. Our inflammation actually increases and that's why some of these changes happen too, is our inflammation goes up. So turmeric or curcumin is actually really good for menopause. And then I always say a D and a K together are really good for just overall health too. But that K added with the D actually helps bones. And so those are probably my ones that I go for most of the time in menopause to help.
It's good stuff. What about migraines? Can they be hormonal related?
Yeah, and migraines are definitely hormonal. A lot of times it's a spike in estrogen. So that's what causes hot flashes, is you have a spike in estrogen and you don't have that progesterone to calm down. I've actually done a lot of things with progesterone. You might see if you're ovulating or not. If they go with your cycle, magnesium really helps with, but progesterone can really help with migraines. That's probably my number one, especially if you're in that perimenopausal years that you're still cycling or something. Progesterone can be a lifesaver for a lot of my women. And magnesium is another one. I always tell people we gave magnesium infusions for people that came in with severe migraines. That's what you're going to get when you go into the hospital. You're going to get some steroids and some other things, but it's a big infusion of magnesium.
Interesting. That's good to know. Yes. Heather's asking, we were talking about those vitamins, and she said, is that in addition to a multivitamin?
Yeah, I'm kind of on a multi.
I am that kind of, yeah.
There's some great ones out there and things, but yes, I usually say in addition to a multi. Usually my multivitamins, you just want to make sure that they're pretty clean. That but the hard thing is most of the clean brands out there, you have to take like 15 pills and stuff. And so I usually just say trying to get a lot of those things you can get from just nutrition. And so magnesium is one that most of us are deficient in. So that's why I always say magnesium.
Anne is asking, intermittent fasting is part of the faster way. Is it for menopause weight loss? Is this a forever way of eating? Yes. So in the faster way, we do teach you about intermittent fasting, which, like I said, can be 12 hours, and that's giving your body digestive rest. And there's lots of other benefits to fasting. And then we teach macros, which is getting your protein needs met, and then your carbs and fats too, but in the right balance. Macros really, once you learn them, you really learn how to balance your plate and eat. And it's really good for menopause and all of the rest of your life. Really, it's a lifestyle, not a diet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, intermittent fasting is great. There's some different resources out there that are really good. I preach some intermittent fasting, especially if you're a little insulin resistant or diabetic. That's actually been proven to lower those levels. And so, but work with somebody to find out what's best for you, because for some people, a 12 is about all they can go. For some people, they might go a 24-hour once a week. They might, do a little bit longer fast, but still getting those nutrients in. And so I do encourage lots of people to work with a nutritionist or a coach to really nail those down. And that's one reason I have Neely.
So Jess says that she started taking the Bio-Optimizer and it's changed her sleep. She was on Ambien and she's just been able to get off that. So that's awesome.
Wow. That's awesome.
That is awesome. Let's see. Awesome. Okay. Well, we've kind of answered all of the questions that are in the chat feature. I think this was a great topic. We kept it under an hour. Hallelujah.
Yay.
But this is kind of scratching the surface. I'll link those books that we talked about. So if you want to go read, get some extra knowledge, and then start, asking questions, ask your practitioner and really get to the root of what's bothering you, because, maybe you have 3 of these symptoms plus hot flashes, but they can be fixed. They can, you can either take HRT or supplements or change your lifestyle a little bit to make things better. There is hope, and there is, you don't have to be miserable in menopause. That's our takeaway, right?
Yes, that's the biggest thing is the Galveston diet. That's another one that's actually really good too. She puts a lot of these things together too.
She's a good one to follow on Instagram too.
She is. But yeah, just putting all these things together and working with somebody to really voice. And if they don't hear you, go to a new person. Some doctors won't say, I don't really know how to do that and stuff. And so finding somebody that does is really helpful.
Yes. And yeah, my sister was just a doctor that pretty much just was like, and I'm like, you need to find somebody else then, because you're having issues. There's clearly something not right. So you're going to find someone else. But there's a lot of great.
Can I just say thank you so much to both of you. You've been so helpful, and it's hard because even the mood swings change. I've always been a happy-go-lucky, and I'm like, why do I feel so low? Why do I feel so down, right? And that's the thing. It's like you feel like crying just at the drop of a hat. And of course, that's probably the perimenopause, menopause kicking in. I just have one question for you, if you don't mind. I have also endometriosis, and I know that's might be a little different for women with the perimenopause. I get the migraines, I get the hip pains and the joints. So is there something else that can help with the endometriosis, or just do the same for those of us who have?
Endometriosis is actually has a lot to do with diet. There's actually some studies out there that really talk about, I really have preached, I've seen people reverse theirs by just taking dairy out of their lifestyle, and really doubling down on that and going gluten and dairy free. That's actually a really helpful thing to get those balance. But also a lot of times with endometriosis, those progesterone's off a little bit. You're a little more estrogen dominant. And so that's why those headaches and things like that, that's really.
Whoops. You're muted, Celeste.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Sorry.
In the second half of your cycle, one of the biggest things is to eat some orange foods. Eat like your butternut squash, your sweet potatoes, things like that. That will actually increase your progesterone. But going gluten and dairy free, I have seen women after women actually change their endometriosis. I can tell you of 4 patients that actually reversed from a stage 4 endometriosis to they couldn't find any anymore. After about 6 months of changing their diet.
That's awesome. And gluten and dairy free is not as hard as you think. There's so many alternatives out there, especially dairy. Like yogurts and so many different milks and cheeses, and it's not really that hard.
Yeah, it's not that hard. I have a daughter that's totally gluten and dairy free, and she's in college. So I always say if she can do it, anybody can do it.
Yes. Yes, that's the hardest time for your life to do that. Okay, I'm going to have one last question, and then we're going to let you all go. Does cellulite occur because of low estrogen?
It can. Sometimes that's just the cortisol actually going into the fat. So insulin also, that's kind of some of that, because you become a little more insulin resistant. So it can all go with that lower estrogen also, just causing those other things to happen.
Yeah. Estrogen is needed. So check out that book, Estrogen Matters, and I'll link it in the replay notes too, because that is a really good book to read, and really just, be a detective of your own health and really dig deep and find help, like find someone that's going to help you.
Yes.
And there are lots of people that do online consults as well. I'll link, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I'm also going to link Celeste's office here in South Lake. So you can visit her. She would love to see you. I don't think they're doing online yet, but maybe
we do some online, but we like in person first. So I do have people all over, but we like in person because I like to touch you and see if there's something physically wrong, because there really is something about physical exam that we found,
especially the first one. Come up from San Antonio. That's not that far, Katrina.
I have people who've driven from College Station, Houston, lots from Oklahoma actually that will come in too.
I had one of my clients say she was willing to fly in, and I was like, awesome, fly in, come on. Dallas has a lot of great things to do while you're here.
And so I have lots of people that will come in from West Texas and some other places too. So
well, thank you, Celeste, for being our expert today. It was wonderful. We will wrap this up. Just thank you all for joining us. If you're just catching the replay, I hope that you learned a little bit. I hope you can take one thing away, at least one. I know that I myself have even writing notes down, and Celeste and I talk about all of this stuff all the time, and I'm still writing notes down. So
I learn something new every day from people. So even some of my patients come and tell me things that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that. So.
New things pop up every day. Well, anyway,
thank you.
You're welcome.
May I ask you something? I'm in the Toronto area, and this is so helpful, and I don't want to take credit, but would there be any way if I got a few friends and whatnot to do this again? I don't want to take your credit, but I would love for other people to know, because this is so informative and so many people don't do anything about this. So what can we do? I don't want to take credit.
You can share the replay with them. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. I'm going to email the replay right after this call, so it'll be in your inbox shortly. Well, you guys all have a wonderful night, and thank you again, Celeste, and thanks for being here.
You.
Bye, guys.